So one of the questions that I hear quite often is, does God really talk to you? And when he talks to you, how do you know that he's talking to you and it's not something that you're saying yourself, or better yet, that other people are saying for you? So I want to talk about how to know it's God's voice and what are some things that we can do to make sure that we are hearing what he has for us. And the verse that I want to use for that is from Jeremiah chapter 33, verse 3. And I love the English Standard Version in this one where it says, "Call to me, and I will answer you, and will tell you great and hidden things that you have not known." So I want to say I recently set up my home studio just so that I could do voiceovers. I work with a consultant who made recommendations of the types of hardware and software, that I needed. And I had ordered everything that I needed and picked up from the store the other things that I needed. And I was missing just one thing, and that were the headphones. I needed the specific type or quality of headphones, and come to find out they were damaged in transit. So I had to reorder them and had to wait for them to come. So I mentioned this to my father, and then one day he came over, and it was just so cute. He was standing in my family room, and he says, "Oh, I have a surprise for you." And I said, "What is it, Dad?" And he has his hands behind his back, and he pulls out these headphones. He's like, "Oh, I got these headphones for you." And so I kind of chuckled, and I was like, "Thank you, Dad." I said, "But, for the studio, I really need a specific quality of headphones so that I can use that will not distort the sound or anything like that." So I want to show you, these are actually the headphones, and they are called Extreme Isolation EX29s, right? So this is what they look like. So this is what I was waiting for. And I want to talk about how the characteristics of these headphones are what is required when we're trying to hear from God. And sometimes there's just difficulty in hearing for whatever reason. So first of all, these headphones offer a high fidelity stereo sound and high volume. You think about fidelity, like what does that mean? And fidelity is the degree of exactness with which something is copied. So think about that in relation to when we're trying to hear from God. Like, I don't want to hear, third hand, fourth hand, fifth hand. I want to hear what God has to say to me. Now, I will say that God speaks to us, and usually there is a confirmation. Someone else will come and confirm what God has told you. But when I'm hearing, I want to hear it first. I want to hear it as he has it for me. I don't want it to be distorted. And and let's face it, we live in a very high volume society. There's constant chatter. We're constantly being bombarded. There's 24-hour news cycles. People are always shouting at one another, and the list goes on. But I tell you what, when I put these on, I feel as though I can hear every single note, every single beat that goes on. And the beauty of it is, I don't hear anything else that's happening around me. So that's that fidelity sound in stereo quality, stereo sound. So think about that children's game where you would whisper to one person, you'd say something, and then that person has to whisper to the next person, and the next person, and the next person, until it went all the way around the circle. And it always amazed me how that by the time the story got around the circle to the end, it was a completely different story. I mean, and in fact, it started off as like something that was positive or at best neutral, but by the time the story ended, it ended up being this negative story. I mean, like, really, how does Janelle went to the corner store where she ran into Vaughn and they caught up over slushies turn into Janelle and Vaughn went to the store and got into a fight and threw slushies on each other? I mean, really, how does that happen? Sometimes extreme isolation is required of us because when we remove the distractions, we place ourselves in position to receive divine instruction. So, secondly, my headphones offer what's called passive attenuation. What is that? I am so glad you asked because I had to look it up myself. I didn't know what it meant. But passive attenuation reduces the power of what's being delivered. So what that means is it weakens a very strong signal without causing distortion. If you look at these headphones, you can see the ear cups. These actually, when I put these on, they act almost like a suction as they are very tight against my ears. And this is what produces that really good sound. And if you're a drummer or you're in a loud situation, that sound is actually reduced a little bit so that it doesn't cause harm, but it's not distorted. That's what's distinctly different. So now I need you to really stick with me here. So sometimes what God has to tell you is so mind-blowing that he won't give you the whole story, but instead will show you just enough, just a glimpse. In other words, the signal is so strong that it goes through passive attenuation because he doesn't want what he's telling you to be distorted by fear or insecurity. He wants you to hear him and rely on him. And I love the saying that if your dreams don't scare you, then they're simply not big enough. And the reason for this is because this keeps us dependent on God. And I'm just preaching to myself right now because there are times when I see glimpses and it's like, oh, Lord, are you serious? And so I have to step back and he's like, girl, come on, just stick with me. I just need you to stick with me. Just stay right here. Just stay on this step. I'm not asking you to look at the whole story. I'm asking you to stay right here with me. And so that's what we have to do when we are listening to God. So finally, my headphones actually prevent what is called leakage. So I had to kind of look that up too because I had an idea, but I really didn't know what that meant. So what that means, if I'm in the studio recording and I have my headphones on and the sound of what I'm hearing leaks from my headphones, it's going to be picked up from my microphone. And you don't want that when you are recording. All right, so stay with me again, all right? So when God tells you something, it ain't for everybody else. You're not hearing me. Extreme isolation means that what is told to you is for you. Don't need that leaking out and you telling everybody else. That is for you. And going back to our verse, Jeremiah 33:3, where it says, when we hear God, he tells us great and hidden things. That means these are secret things that are things that people aren't supposed to know right now. That means keep it to yourself. Keep it to yourself. So does God talk to us? Absolutely. And sometimes we have to go into extreme isolation to get that high fidelity stereo sound that we know it's him and him alone. And that too, we have that passive attenuation so that we can receive what he's saying. He may have to buffer it just a little bit so that it doesn't scare us and that we can just continue to rely on him. And then finally, when we do hear him, extreme isolation prevents the leakage because that part of the dream that he's showing us is just for us for that particular moment. Thank you so much for listening. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments section. And if you're listening via YouTube, please be sure to click like and also the subscribe button. And remember, with My Tinted Halo, we celebrate being perfectly imperfect.